Welcome back to Hold My Heels, the power of unapologetic living. I'm still Dr. Ajax, and it's good to see you in the sister circle. Before I get started, I would like to personally thank everyone who turned the words DEI and affirmative action from dog whistles into culturally coded phrases for our viewing and listening pleasure over on the Black Twitter. We showed the world, and by we, I mean y'all, because I was too scared to openly like or comment any of the posts because it's hiring season. But that's a story for another day. Also, I want to say, why do we always have to turn them people's dog whistles into comedy? Like, when will they learn? I really wish they would grow up and stop being such snowflakes all the time. Anyway, on to why we came here. I'm aware that this episode may piss off some of my good blacks, and I may lose a follower or two, and I'm okay with that. Hopefully you can come back after you've had some time to think about it. Well, on to the nitty gritty. As I have said before, I hate respectability politics, and I'm totally on board with Dr. Stoney Morrison, or R. Randolph Jr. on Twitter, all one word, with wanting to create a politics of disrespectability. I feel like it's my life's purpose to dismantle this curse for us. So we can do like Mary said and take the shackles off our feet and we can dance. Well, actually for me, I would like to twerk with my right arm in the air while I'm doing a little slight two-step as I scream, "Go sexy, go sexy." Now, I don't know why I like that song so much, but it is stuck in my head and I play it or sing it every 15 minutes. Send help, but don't, because I love it here. Anywho, like I was saying, respectability politics bad, disrupting the system good. I'm going to have a very heavy episode today. Heavy for myself and heavy for my listeners. I'm actually going to talk about something I have not ever talked about openly with people. This episode is real raw. At 6 o'clock because the original recording, I didn't feel it was giving who I actually am, and I wanted it to be very raw. So there's no music this morning. It's just me, you, and a podcast mic in my dark living room. Now, I've told you that the truth hurts. We have to operate through it, not against it or around it. These are my opinions. I do need you to bear with me today because it's a long walk. I ask that you allow me space in this episode to speak freely, to allow you to hear my heart and to see my hurt. Now, let's get into it. I believe that in order to break our respectability politics, I want us to stop using two phrases. You ready? Black excellence and black girl magic. Now, I heard you suck your teeth and clutch your pearls, but breathe and relax a minute. Hear me out. First, those two phrases are literally culturally created words to take power back, but they are also rooted in respectability politics. Black excellence is our way of shortening the phrase we have all heard since birth. Say it with me now. You have to be twice as good to get half as far, and we turn it into black excellence so that it's more palatable to others and it doesn't get people the ick and say things like, "That's not true. Everybody has to work hard. Everybody has to do good." But we know that in order to get to the highest levels, we have to be untouchable. We have to be the best of the best. For instance, have y'all noticed how there's a certain team that did not win the NCAA championship on like a complete press tour? But anyway, so mind you, we know we have to be overqualified, overcertified, and overexperienced in many ways and have titles that don't suit our credentials because, people just don't see us as they should see us. Now, institutional racism continues to put us in a place where we can't make it to the highest levels unless we fall into those stereotypes, the tropes that we have. Now, the second thing I want us to stop saying, like I said, was black girl magic. This gives credence to us not being human, being at doing the simplest things like our jobs or excelling at sports. The things that we want to be good at. Like I just said, we can't just be good. We have to be magical. It has to be superhuman. It has to be something nobody else could do, despite the fact that it quite literally is the exact same thing everyone else should be able to do. Me at rest should be the same rest as most people. Me at work doing the bare minimum should be easy for everybody to excel in. Now, yes, you have to be different in order to go the ranks of leadership. There is absolutely nothing here saying that you don't have to. In order to stand out, you have to stand out. But our baseline is not standing out. Well, it shouldn't be. It should just be our baseline. So, While I was researching for my dissertation, I came across a Medium article by La Negra. It's entitled, "Whose Black Excellence Is It?" She says, "The notable difference between Black excellence and white excellence is that white excellence is achieved without meeting resistance in the form of institutional racism." When I read this, my life was forever changed, because I definitely used Black Girl Magic and I performed in Black excellence because I wanted to be the thing to do. Now, please understand, I'm not saying that I'm some person who didn't fall victim to this. I definitely was. Like, I'm telling you, I used to say this about myself and other people all the time. You can go back in my Facebook, on my Twitter, Instagram. I was Black Girl Magicking it up. But once I read that, it shattered my view of thinking in a lot of ways. And it's how I now and that I can rest. I don't have to be superhuman. I can just be normal because that's who I am. Now, before I go any further, I want to say something very special for me. This episode is dedicated to a Black woman that I have watched on Twitter be an amazing teacher. She is a leader of her field. She is a master of her craft, and she is a dedicated, trusted adult for numerous students in a system that we aren't always that for them. I watched her lead without a title, and people not just follow her, but they're up their game due to her leadership in secondary education. I watched her desire to step out of the classroom and pursue official leadership roles, and then I watched how she was beat down and broken by leadership that is currently in position in our systems. She has done the work. She is someone who has put in the time. She is ready to lead. She is ready to be able to provide teachers what they say they want from a good leader. Someone who understands what it takes to be a teacher, an educator in the classroom right now. Someone who understands that it's not easy to do these superhuman things in order to get students to be engaged and active in learning and love learning. But I watched in real time her go from subject matter expert who was consistently applauded for her work to ultimately being told, it's not your time. Because of those who would be her level alike colleagues and leadership, I believe they were afraid of what she was fully bringing to the leadership table. Quietness, mediocrity, and the willingness to play the game for a seat at the wobbly table is always rewarded. But I say this to you, you beautifully talented mad woman, your time is coming, and it will be glorious. I pray that the leader you need is watching you and preparing a space for you. Your work is needed outside the classroom, so don't give up and don't let them get to you. Get back up, start fighting again, and keep moving. Now, today's episode content has been sitting with me like a ton of bricks for about 2 weeks. So much so that I wasn't going to discuss this. Like I felt like I wasn't ready. Verse works I couldn't finish. I couldn't finish any other topic I started, and I couldn't understand why. Until this morning at about 4 o'clock, it hit me. I couldn't finish the work because I needed to talk about this. I needed to get this hurt off of my chest, and I needed to let the world around me see that it is totally okay that you're not okay. It's totally okay that you were used and abused and you need time to heal. So I know that somebody needs to hear this today, and I sit in silence with you as you heal from the harm the institutions we work for and around and ultimately through. I sit with you as you heal, as your wounds close up, and as you get the strength to get back up. Black excellence and Black girl magic are literally killing us spiritually, mentally, and physically. We are working ourselves to the white meat, while fully knowing our 20% most times equals or exceeds others' 80%. And how it only works for a little bit because then we become too big for our britches and it becomes someone else's mission to put us in our place. Here's looking at you, wet blanket. Remember, I said I wouldn't hide the names of those that were innocent, but I would hide those that were not so innocent because I don't feel like dealing with their crying and whining, but I'm coming for them. I'm coming for all of the people who are detrimental to Black women. I might not say your name, but you're going to know I'm talking about you. And I want you to understand the harm you've created in these spaces, in the atmosphere, and in the universe. And I pray that truly love us and truly step in every way imaginable. Now, this is going to be hard to hear and swallow possibly, because I'm going to talk about some of the greats. Do you know where the idea of us having to be better to get ahead came from? It blew me away when I found out. So you probably already know this, but I did not go to an HBCU until I got my doctorate. I went to PWI, so they didn't exactly tell us these things. So Booker T. Washington really believed and said out loud that if blacks improved their job skills and usefulness, it would get us further than tearing all this stuff up. Like, he was like, don't protest, don't cause a ruckus, go out there and learn how to sew up some ground. That's my best Booker T. Washington impression. Forgive me. He might not have been country. I don't even think he was country, but for me today, he's country. He backwards. Now, he ultimately said if we would stop jawjacking and go to work, the white man would take us serious. And I ask, Booker, how has that worked out for us? Because I got a bunch of degrees and certifications, and there are days that people treat me like I know nothing, right? Like, I have used my hands to do the work, and people are still like, it's not good enough. Now, mind you, what he actually said was that once white people could see that black people would contribute to the marketplace of the world and be content with living by the production of our hands, the barriers of racial inequality and social injustice would begin to erode. White people would accept us. Everything would be okay. He ultimately said this in September in 1895, and on that day, he became a good black, and it worked for him. He got invited to all the parties and got to sit with all the important people, but there was a cost, and we're still paying it. Now, many in his time sarcastically called what he did that day in September the Atlanta Compromise, because he was in Atlanta and he definitely compromised. As I thought about Booker's work and what he expected of us, I thought back to what LaNegra's article said. She states that, black people think it will eradicate racism if they work twice as hard, be smarter, be better, act better, and it does not. Now, I'm not mad at Book, but my man, what? This man was literally talking about manual labor. Like, we didn't just escape slavery. Like, we weren't just out there in the fields using the labor of our hands, breaking our backs and building a country from nothing. And they gave us nothing. They paid us dust. Like, they called us lazy. Like, we built this city. We built this world. We built these systems so that they could create structures that harmed us ultimately. Like, what made him think that this would work? Like, there was obvious history that showed that it did not work. Now, I wish that I was there with Booker T so I could have said this to his face, but fortunately there were others around, like W.E.B. Du Bois, who stood in for me and was like, hey, listen, that little speech you made was cute, but it was one-sided and it harmed us. Now, Du Bois was like, so you're really trying to tell me the only way for us to get acceptance is if we go along with they believe about us, which is the idea that we are just workhorses and we should do manual labor to continue building their systems. Like, that's what you said. So Du Bois was like, nah, son, I'm good. Now, Booker went ahead and established the prestigious Tuskegee University, where he put into action his belief that learning manual trades was the way to success. But Du Bois was still on his head, and he was like, listen, son, the object of all true education is not to make men carpenters, it is to make carpenters men. Du Bois, he truly, I don't know how I want to say this to you, but both of these people are wrong. Like, it takes all kinds to make us successful, but degrees aren't going to make people respect us, and learning manual trades is not going to make people respect us. The only thing that's going to make people respect us is people respecting us. Like, we want to be accepted so badly that we're willing to give up respect for it. And how we try to tell ourselves that we can be respected is by falling into respectability politics. And we don't have to. Both of these men were ultimately leading us into Black excellence, because we don't have to be a workhorse and we all don't have to have degrees. And WE, didn't you say something about the talented 10th? Didn't you say only a few of us can make it to the top? So they both had issues, and it's definitely side-eye to both of them, but we're going to let them continue on in perpetuity as the scholars that they are. Now, while they were fighting against each other, they were ultimately the same coin, just separate sides, which we will get to later on as we talk about the cultural hazing that happens between us, and we talk about the crabs in a barrel mentality, where we are ultimately able to be divided completely without making success, because we're fighting each other instead of fighting outside. Now, the next 4 episodes will be focusing on the types of stereotype threat that are used against us in institutions that are holding up the structures of systemic racism. This 4-part series will be culminated with an episode on microaggressions in the workplace. So basically, the next 4 episodes are going to hurt. They're going to pull back the scab we've been allowing to heal, and I ask you to make space for it. This is where I will plug therapy, because you're going to need it. Despite the fact that we all think we are handling this well, we are not. So I ask you, girl, did you call them people yet? All right, I'm going to ask you again next week, but hey, listen, I'm going to ask you, you need therapy. Therapy is not a one-time occurrence. It's not because you went through one situation and you need to work through that situation. You're able to break free of all of the things that are holding you back. Therapy is good. If you have to go to therapy for 1 week or 10 years, do it. Don't let nobody tell you differently. Now, I don't consider myself an expert in the field of respectability politics, but my dissertation was focused on Black women in leadership and how or if imposter syndrome and systemic racism played a part in their leadership journey. Spoiler alert, we don't suffer from imposter syndrome. Black excellence is the culprit, along with some other things. So, I will quote myself some, but also lead you to other researchers. I'm basically saying this because if anybody just tries to say, well, she didn't give us a lot of research, it's because I literally did my dissertation on it, and if you want the dissertation, just DM me and I'll get it to you. So the first scholar I want to bring your attention to is Dr. Claude M. Steele, who introduced the concept of stereotype threat, which describes the psychological strain experienced when an individual is in a situation that could confirm a negative stereotype about their social group. Think, you're the only Black person in a space and everybody's watching you. Basically, you end up doing everything you can to not be a stereotype. But then you end up becoming another one of the stereotypes because you're trying so hard not to be the worst stereotype. That's pretty much basically what it is in the rawest form. Now, Dr. Claude Steele's work is phenomenal, and you should definitely research it and read more about it, because it really delves into how stereotype threat stops us and then how it's used in microaggressions. And while stereotype threat can affect anyone of color, because everyone has stereotypes, it impacts Black women significantly in the workplace, where we frequently face stereotypes such as being undereducated, ethically conform to white norms. This is true of Black men as well, but I can't tell a lived experience I've never lived. So, if there is a Black man out there, hey, how you doing, that wants to share your side of the story, please DM me so that I can get you on the podcast so you can share the other side of the coin. Now, stereotype threat is the reason some people scream that affirmative action is why someone of color got a job. But we all know the research says differently. We know who has had hand over fist experience with the come up due to affirmative action, but we won't talk about them today. So let's talk about the 4 types of stereotype threat that Black women face. There's a self-sacrificing mammy, the hostile crazy Black bitch, the domineering sapphire, and the overachieving superwoman. These stereotypes contribute to difficulties in forming a stable social identity and perpetuate intersecting oppressions in the workplace and the systems that are institutionalized. Now, I won't cuss very often on here because I want this to be a space for us to heal, and I don't feel like cussing has to always happen to do that. So please be mindful that won't happen often, but when it does, it will be tasteful as I can make it. Now, I want you to think about the superwoman phenomena, and I want you to align that to Black girl magic and Black excellence. In this episode, we're going to focus on how that superwoman stereotype fuels those two things. And if we're being honest, I feel this is the way that it happens for Black women because it implies that, we always have superhuman resilience, which increases the pressure we feel and potentially heightens our belief that we have imposter syndrome, when in fact most times we're being gaslit by mediocre people who are threatened by our ability to get stuff done and our intelligence level. Dr. Keisha M. Thomas speaks a lot about this and coined the phrase pet to threat. In 2013, she surmised this idea perfectly. During her research, she found that Black women were often encouraged and supported early on in their careers by mentors and professors, most often white. And once they became confident in their craft, they were met with hostility because they had become better than those who led them or mentally gained more influence in the circles that they were in. The early and current research shows that there needs to be more scholarly work around the psychological effects of this type of oppression and how we ultimately navigate in the workplace. So, through my research for my dissertation, I ended up finding the work of Dr. Cheryl L. Woods Giscombe, who created the Superwoman schema. Dr. Woods Giscombe's concept of the Superwoman schema explores the unique pressures faced by African American women, who we often adopt a persona of strength and resilience in the face of systemic challenges and personal responsibilities. You know, the whole "I'm too strong to let this bother me, I'm too blessed to be stressed." That's not true. You can be blessed and stressed at the same time. You can be strong and bothered at the same time. You can also be vulnerable, and it's okay. We don't have to always be the strongest in the room, and you are human, and you deserve to be treated as a human woman. Now, this schema outlines how African American women strive to project an image of self-sacrificing and being capable of managing multiple roles, including professional duties and being a wife and a mother and all of the community responsibilities we sign ourselves up for. And we do all of this without showing vulnerability or emotional needs. So we ultimately become the robots that we get everything done, but we literally neglect ourselves. Dr. Woods Giscombe's research identifies this schema as both a source of pride and a potential risk factor for mental and physical. So, as we continue to consistently prioritize the needs of others and displaying an unwavering strength, we are adhering to this schema because we end up neglecting our own health and well-being, which leads to increased stress, burnout. Her work really emphasized for me the need for better understanding around the complexities and consequences of this in my daily life, and how I needed to develop effective support systems so I wasn't as impacted as harshly as I tried to live up to societal expectations. And I think that's important for you to do as well. As I started to hone my sister circle, I began to realize that I operated too frequently in this space. Something that really hit me last week, I was watching a movie, and Issa Rae's character in American Fiction, she said, "Potential is what people see when you think what's in front of them isn't good enough." And it really kicked me in the teeth. Like, I think of all the times I've walked into a space and everyone just loved me, and everyone, was just satisfied or whatever. Or they'd be like, "You've got what it takes, and, I want to do A, B, and C to help you succeed." And while there's nothing wrong with people genuinely wanting to support you and help you grow, you have to be mindful about if they're actually capitalizing on who you are or if they're trying to change who you are. And I really thought about this when I think about the same thing when I see people, they could definitely have the potential to do A, B, and C. I am in no shape, form, or fashion capable of saying that somebody isn't good enough yet. There are spaces where I feel like people can be provided support so that they can grow and develop. But it's not about me changing them. It's about me literally saying, how can I best support you to be the best you want to be? So I'm going to talk about this lived experience, and it's hard for me because I have not talked about this with many people. So I ask that you bear with me as I relive this hurt that I have not fully processed, and you allow me some space to grieve. Now, mind you, when I got to Virginia, I was new to EdTech leadership. I had worked in EdTech and done things with this arena before, but not to this level. And someone who was like EdTech royalty pulled me under her wing because she said that I had the change in the systems that I worked in. And I believed her. And I still believe her. And I still believe that she is one of the greatest mentors I've had while being in Virginia. And I appreciate her tremendously. I do know that organizations change. And I know that with the change of this organization that I initially started my work in, it's not what it used to be and it's not what it could be. And I say this with no tongue in cheek. The potential this organization has is powerful, but they choose to not live in it because they are stagnated by being part of the good old boy system. Now, I did lots of work with two other fantastic individuals, a man and a woman of color, to a black man and a black woman who are doing phenomenal things, one in ed tech and one in special education. And we came together and we thought about how if we were going to really create a place and a program that was comprehensive and allowed for underrepresented people to really succeed and be showcased, one of the things we wanted to do was provide a mentor program. So me and these two individuals, we created curriculum, we reached out and we established support systems and mentors, and we recruited mentees, and we did a lot of work to get African American individuals into this arena because it was a place where we didn't see ourselves. And so we did 3 rounds of that. We started doing webinars where we talked about leadership, where we talked about DEI things, where we really highlighted what it was like to be in the ed tech field and be underrepresented. We did good work, and I'm not just saying that because it was me and people that I care about. I say that because they've continued the structure of what we put in place, so it was obviously good in some capacity. Now, I say they're still using it. The hurt and harm initially came from the fact that while I was doing this work, I ran for board, and I didn't get it. And I was told, hey, it's just not your time. And I said, I completely understand that. I'm new to the scene. I'm just barely starting to work. People don't know my name. So a year went by and I was asked to be a speaker and I talked about failing forward and how as Black women, we don't always have the support to be able to fail and not have a consequence. It's almost like people are waiting to see if we're going to fail and how hard we're going to fall. And I gave this speech and it was well received. People to this day still come up to me and tell me how it impacted them. But I also immediately noticed that the old guard, the older white men in this organization were not happy about the things that I said. I definitely called out systemic and institutional issues that were rampant and are still rampant in the system. I didn't think it would harm me in the ways that it did, but truth always has a consequence. And so I just didn't realize what the consequence was going to be. Now, after the conference, they opened up board nominations again, and I ran again, and I felt like, I had done a lot of work with this organization, and I had just been a speaker at this organization, so it couldn't possibly be still not my time. And the reason I wanted to be part of the board is because I felt like as the leadership was changing, they needed people who could sit at the table and be representative of the changes that were previously made for the better. And I wanted Black women in this organization to see we were of value to this arena. So the voting starts and it goes the allotted time, and then they close the voting. A few days later, they open the voting back, which is weird because it's not really ever happened before. And if you know anything about nominations, people vote and you move on, and however many votes you got, whoever wins, wins. So they open it up for a little while longer, and I do not make board. And it hurt a little bit because it was like, is it still not my time, or is this a consequence for me being very vocal about how I felt the system was not built for Black women? So I heard through the grapevine that, I may have actually gotten the numbers, but incoming leadership didn't feel that it was appropriate to have me there, because I wasn't going to sing the song that they wanted me to sing, which should be why you have varied board members, but that's neither here nor there. So I got over that hurt because, being on the board isn't super important. It's a nice accolade, and, it allows you to make some changes, but it's not an end all be all. So we took a little break over a few months, and we were getting ready to come back together so that we could start on the committee again. And I get a text message from someone I consider a very good friend, and they say to me, "Are you not part of the committee anymore?" And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean?" And they loop me into the fact that both myself and the other co-chair had been completely removed from the committee. There was no conversation. There was no email. There was no phone call. There was nothing. Two people who had given 2.5 years of their life were just erased. And it hurt. It hurt really bad. And I immediately emailed in my anger and was like, "What is going on? And what do you mean? And how is this happening?" And it hurt even more because they gave this space to non-minority people to run, people in some instances who had never done any work in DEI, who had never even mentioned the words DEI. So it just seemed disgusting. And it's not their fault. They did what anybody would do. They took an opportunity, and I'm not upset with them. I'm upset with the way that leadership decided to handle it. And ultimately, leadership reached out to me and was like, "Oh, we're sorry you found out this way." The end. Not sorry that we were not kind, considerate, or professional in the way that we handle this. It was more like, "Well, now you know, move on with your life." And I was hurt. I was so hurt that I walked away from this organization with a bad taste in my mouth. I did not want to be associated with them. And any Black woman who came to me and told me that they're going to do work with them, I told them my story, because I wanted them to understand these people don't care about what you're saying. They want your face. They want to use you because that's what they've been doing. And as I continue to watch, it was apparent what they did. If you go to their website right now, it's not representative of the larger group that they serve. It's very misleading, and that hurts me because they have the potential to be everything that they're promoting, but they just don't want to do it. So I appreciate you allowing me to be transparent with that and to get that hurt off of my heart. And I thank you for allowing me to be raw this morning with this episode. Now, that's a lot, and I know that we each have gone through situations like this, and I ask that you, just as you interact with organizations and people, that you think about, are you getting something out of this, or are they the only ones getting something out of this? And don't take the stance of, I'm doing this for exposure, or I'm doing this to get to the next level, because it's never worth your sanity. If you know who I'm talking about, I don't need you to reach out and tell me how sorry you are. I need you to help me dismantle the system that is in place. I need you to speak from the inside out. I need for you to speak from the outside in, and make space for diversity, to make space for inclusive spaces and people and ideas. It is about taking the hurt from other people and supporting them through making organizations see their wrongs, correct them, and move forward. Now, I want to get us back to Black girl magic and Black excellence. I want you to think about how these two phrases really perpetrate the pressures to be performative, and ultimately continue to deal in respectability politics, so we can get further, because that's why we do them. That's why we shout it out, so we can show that we've made another achievement. We got another accolade. We got another certification. We got another degree. We got another something somebody doesn't have. They don't care, sis. They do not care. Do not kill yourself mentally, physically, spiritually for people who could not care less. And despite that, many times we use these phrases through positive intentions, they truly inadvertently hold up the very stereotypes that we are trying to get away from. They are imposing the unrealistic standards of perfection on Black women. So please think that through. Think about how you interact in the spaces you're in, and think about why you're doing what you're doing. It was totally my pleasure this episode to honor a mad woman, because I see myself in her. I see the hurt that she experienced, and I wish I could tell her that it gets better, but it doesn't. I wish that I could tell her that this may be the first time, but it's going to definitely be the last time, and it'll all be fine. But that would not be true. I will say this to you, though. I see your struggles and your resilience in the face of this systemic challenge. I see you navigating these workspaces and structures around you. So I'll hold space for you as you walk through. And I ask that you hold space for me. I ask that we continue to challenge the norms and encourage critical thinking about the pressures imposed by these unrealistic expectations. It is crucial to remember that our strength lies not just in resilience, but in our ability to thrive authentically. Remember that Black excellence is performative, and you don't have to work yourself to the bone to prove nothing to nobody. Because at the end of the day, it's about you, and it's about how you feel you've done in those spaces. Do not work yourself until you're a burnt out shell of who you truly are. You don't owe anyone anything. Save yourself, your sanity, and your dignity. So, for now, remember, every step you take is a testament to your strength and grace. Keep striding forward and definitely hold your head up high, and never forget you've got someone to hold your heels when it's needed. I hope you conquer your world today. Until next time, stay empowered, stay you, and slay in your own personal way.